So what I want to run through is some of the stuff we would have done in kind of 2009 when we were kind of starting and getting going at this kind of stuff. The first thing we worked on was figuring out, what the break-even point was of the business. Like, how much money do we need to make just to cover the costs and not kind of go further into debt or start burning cash reserves. So I want to run through it as an example. Let's assume your rent rates is 1,500 quid per month. It could be more, it could be less. Let's assume your taxation, is, in terms of VAT and stuff like that, is around about 10% of turnover. So we're going to say you're doing 10 grand, so we're going to say it's about 1,000 quid. I've put in an assumption that you have some kind of loan attached to the business in terms of fit out and things like that. You mightn't, but I put it in just for illustrative purposes. And then I've put in debt and deferred things. So at the moment, most people aren't paying VAT and that kind of stuff, but they're still turning over. They're still turning over money. Depending on what the government does and what they suggest and say to us, we, still owe that money as of the information that's out at the moment. So I want to be putting in an amount to cover and try and service some of that loan at some point. Okay. The next thing that we look at is insurance. Your insurance could be a lot more, it could be a lot less. And then some of the things that you just can't really operate a business without. So your phone and internet, your membership software, bank charges, professional fees. People probably leaning on accountants quite a bit at the moment, or at least should be if they have a good one. And then minimum wages. So if and these numbers are very different and they're very subjective. Some guys, 2 grand a month is plenty. Other guys, they wouldn't do 2 grand for a week. But it's important to kind of have a number in there. And then the next thing we look at is what's the total cost attached to that. Then what I'm really looking at and most interested in is, what an accountant would call a cash flow forecast, okay? And I would strongly encourage you to get professional advice on this, but to illustrate it, here's an example. Let's assume you've got 10 grand in the bank, okay, when you open the doors again. In month 1, you do 5 grand of turnover or total sales, and your month 1 cost, which we've worked out here, is 7,800 euros. We work down through this, okay, what you'll see is opening balance of 10 grand, 5 grand of sales, 7,800 euro cost. My closing balance at the end of that month is going to be 7,200 euros, okay? We work all the way down through this and go through it for a couple of months. And what we'll see is you can quite quickly, and again, these numbers, if you do your own numbers, everybody's business is kind of different. You can very, very quickly burn through cash reserves. You had 10 grand, and at the end of month 4, you have 500 quid left. You're now operating, and depending on how quickly you can kind of move from operating in a loss to profit will really impact that. But to illustrate it as an example, let's say we do the exact same thing, but we sell a little bit more each month, okay? So in this scenario, we have the same at the start. Month 1 sales is 5 grand, but month 2 sales is 6 grand, okay? Month 3 sales is 6.5 grand, and month 4 sales is 7,200 quid. You'll see that the kind of closing bank balance at the end of month 4 is 10 times that one. Now, of course, you can do numbers to support any kind of narrative that you have, but the reason I'm pointing this out to people is I think this is what people should be looking at, and this is what we would have done 2009, and this is what we kind of do every month anyway. The situation everybody's in at the moment is difficult, but what we're kind of working on is what is the data telling us, what's the information, what are the numbers telling us, and then what do we need to do from there? Because once you have somewhat of a handle on this, you can probably do this in about 2 or 3 hours on your own, okay? Then you can start figuring out things in terms of, if you have a new business model, which you may have to, how are you going to make sure that business model creates profitability for you? Okay, if you don't have a handle on these numbers, it's very, very difficult to do any kind of forecasting. And without forecasting and estimates and educated guesses, you're kind of left hoping for the best, which isn't a wonderful strategy. But if you take the time to go through these numbers, okay, fill them in as best as you can, have a good hard look at them, and then from there figure out kind of what's the next best step. There's a lot of other things then you can figure out in terms of, what are we selling, who are we selling it to, and how are we going to do that. My read of this, and anybody who knows me quite well will probably guess this, I think there's going to be a much bigger emphasis in businesses in terms of, who can drive revenue, okay? Who can get, and take part in activities that help drive revenue whilst keeping costs low, and to safeguard the kind of the stability of the business. And that's the big thing I'm kind of looking at. The numbers don't really lie. We may get something here. I have no information on that, but something might happen for us. We might not. But taking kind of 2-3 hours or a day to kind of run through these numbers, I think will be really, really valuable for anybody who's kind of in the position we're in. So if you have any questions, just get in touch and I'll be happy to help you out.